I went to a county fair recently. I mentioned this on Twitter too. I went to a county fair and there was this booth there. And this booth had a bunch of papers on it. I don't really want to show the papers because it may like out where I was. But I'll just read like the titles to them. Let me find them here. Hang on. Let me just read the titles of the pamphlets. It gets interesting. I asked the guy, the preacher, I was like, can I take any of these papers? Is it okay? And he's like, yeah, take what you want. Take what you want. I was like, I feel bad because I'm taking like one of everything here. He's like, no, just take it. It's yours. In fact, you can even have this book here. He gives me this book. Let's see if you guys can see this. He says, take this book. It's called More Than a Carpenter by Josh McDowell and Sean McDowell. I don't know Sean McDowell. I do know Josh McDowell. So I got my hands on that book. And I also got some of these papers here. Here's one of the pamphlets. It says, Homosexuality. What does the Bible say? What does the Bible say about homosexuality? There you go. If you ever wondered, there's your answer. We can go through that and find out. Then we've got abortion without natural affection. God, this is like a treasure trove of bullshit. I love going through this shit. Why you can trust the Bible. And then we've got Church of Christ. We'll just say it's Church of Christ. I went up to the guy and said, what denomination are you? And he said, we're non-denominational. I was like, that's kind of strange. So I'm going through all this stuff, and sure enough, I see there, Church of Christ. They claim to be non-denominational. They're not actually non-denominational. That's their whole bit. That's the whole Church of Christ bit. They say we're non-denominational, and that makes us unique and special and all that other stuff, but really they're not. So I found this whole thing on Jehovah's Witnesses. So I wanted to give this thing a read. How accurate are they about Jehovah's Witnesses? Here's the title. It says, Reply to Jehovah Witnesses. Singular. One Jehovah. One Jehovah Witnesses. Multiple witnesses, one Jehovah, I guess. They used to bother me so much when somebody would come out and say, oh, Jehovah Witnesses or this or that. I would be like, oh my God, do you not know anything about this religion? It's Jehovah's Witnesses. There's an apostrophe S. Get it right or don't talk about us, you know? I guess that's just coming back to me after all these years of being pissed off about everything. So Jehovah Witness. One Jehovah. Now we know. It says, Jehovah Witnesses teach from John 1:1 that Jesus is a God. They also say from John 4:23 that we're to worship only the Father. They say Jesus is a created being who is used in creation. All right, so here they're addressing their Trinity claims. They're basically trying to pull their belief system apart one thing at a time. As far as the Trinity goes, this is one of those things that I reassessed when I left religion, when I left Jehovah's Witnesses. Is the Trinity real? Is hellfire real? Like, does the Bible support this stuff? Or are Jehovah's Witnesses right? Because in some cases, Jehovah's Witnesses are actually correct about some of this stuff. So I went to basically a scholar named Bart Ehrman. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him, but really, really cool guy. Really, really good guy. He's super religious at first. He decided to go to college to learn religious studies so that he could be like super really good pastor or something. And as he got into his PhD program, he realized that the Bible was just complete bullshit. Like none of it was what people thought it was. And so he ends up talking about a few things that churches commonly get wrong. Hellfire, the hellfire teaching, you're going to go to hell when you die or heaven or whatever. That's bullshit. That's not true. That's not in the Bible. That's made up by the Catholic Church to control people. Jehovah's Witnesses got that right. The Trinity, that's bullshit. It was made up like centuries later and added in. The words were changed in the original manuscripts to make it seem like the Catholic Church was right about this. It's not true. The Trinity is a bullshit teaching. So that's what this guy was trying to debunk, was Jehovah's Witnesses' belief that the Trinity is BS, but they just so happen to be right about that. I mean, I'm an atheist. I have no stake in this. I'm just saying the Trinity was made up. So anyways, it says Jehovah Witnesses teach from John 1:1 that Jesus is a God. They also say from John 4:23 that we are to worship only the Father. They say Jesus is a created being who is used in creation. And it actually goes a little bit beyond that, just stepping away from the sheet for another second. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Michael the Archangel is Jesus. And that has all kinds of weird theological implications that you wouldn't expect. So it goes on, in defense of the deity of Jesus. Read Exodus 34:14, Deuteronomy 4:24, and Deuteronomy 6:14-15. Jehovah is a jealous God. He will not share his people with another God. And yet in John 5:22 and 23, we're told all judgment is given to the Son so that all may honor Jesus just as they honor the Father. Then it says, read Isaiah 48:11. God will not give his glory to another. And yet in John 17:5, Jesus asks the Father to glorify me together with yourself. How can a created being ask to be glorified together with Jehovah God? How could a jealous God do such a thing? That's really fascinating. I think it's really fascinating that they're pulling verses from like all different parts of the Bible, written thousands and thousands of years apart. One from Exodus, one from Deuteronomy, one from Isaiah, one from Acts and Philippians. They're just like, they're pulling verses from all different parts of everything here to try to prove their point. It reminds me a lot of how Jehovah's Witnesses do it. They do the exact same thing. Jehovah's Witnesses are like pulling verses from the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation and the book of Numbers and the book of Jeremiah, and they're all kind of mashing them all together and saying that they're all talking about the same thing, the same event, when that's just not true. That's not what's happening. And that's very similar. Like, these were written at totally different time periods with totally different contexts. Like, the genre of some of these books wasn't even written as history. It was written as a story to uplift some of the readers. It's fiction. It was written as fiction. And some Bible apologists are reading it as history, when in fact we have the history here and we know that it's not accurate. So that's what these people are doing here. They're just kind of jamming these verses together that are totally different genres and trying to make it fit to prove their belief system is valid. And that's basically all they're really doing, like all the way through it. They're just defending the deity of Jesus as if that would prove anything to anybody, as though that helps anybody. But I did kind of flip through this homosexuality, what does the Bible say about it thing, and I thought this was kind of interesting. I'm just going to read like the first couple of paragraphs here. Let's see what it has to say. Let's read the first paragraph. Was King David of Israel a homosexual? According to some researchers in quotes, it says, in the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches, both King David and Jonathan, the oldest son of King Saul, were gay. In a correspondence course used by their congregation in Key West, Florida, they say, all scripture referring to the love that David and Jonathan had indicates that it was very romantic, personal love. They also imply that Ruth and Naomi, women of the Old Testament, were lesbian lovers and claim homosexuals will receive very special recognition in heaven. Okay, let's just start here. First of all, they're fear-mongering. They're trying to get people all whipped up into a blood frenzy, like, oh my God, homosexuals in the church. What are we going to do? This is scary. And they're justifying it like they're special. I've never heard that claim in my entire life. Ruth and Naomi were lesbians, or that David and Jonathan were gay. Never heard that in my life. I honestly think maybe they're making that up. Somebody correct me in the comments if you've heard this before, but from somebody other than extremist Christians. If you've heard this before from Christians who actually believe it, then leave it in the comments, because that seems like an extremely bizarre claim. They're trying to get people all riled up and afraid, is what they're doing. The Metropolitan Community Church was organized in 1968 by Troy Perry. Metropolitan Community Church congregations can be found in most American cities and a dozen foreign countries. They claim 80% of their members are homosexual. In one of their tracts, Why Are We a Fellowship?, James Sandmeyer states that Metropolitan Community Church creates community where it has never existed before. Literally thousands of lesbians and gay men take strength and comfort in the fact that in most major cities, and now in many rural communities, there is a metropolitan community church. We are becoming widely recognized as a church of liberation for a community in need. This need increases with changing political climates, health crises, and attacks from the religious right. They're just fear-mongering. This is intended for right-wing religious extremists who already holds this view, and they're doing everything that they can to try to convince them of something that they already believe pretty much. If you like what I do and you want to make sure I can continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, you can support me on Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring. I'm trying to make a shirt design for every cult I've covered. I haven't gotten every one, but I'm working on it. So check it out and see if your cult is up there. Second, you can support me by checking out my game shop. I sell controller, cartridge, and game box stands for every system from the original Nintendo and Sega Game Gear to the Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. So give that a look too. And finally, if you want to support me in some way other than monetarily, you can check out my other YouTube channels. I have a retro game channel where I answer questions like, why does Shy Guy have a mask? And why are CRT TVs the best way to play retro games? I also have the podcast where I talk about stuff I don't feel I can say on a monetized channel. And finally, I have my main channel where I talk about cults. I wish I didn't have to worry about dancing around subjects carefully in the first place, but I chose to do this as a full-time job, so unfortunately I rely on YouTube's AdSense and on the support of patrons to continue doing the work I do. Anyways, check me out in all those places if you haven't already. Thanks for listening, guys.